San Diego, November 1989. In one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods, a love story gone horribly wrong reached its shocking conclusion. What began as the American dream, a marriage for children, a rise to wealth and status, ended in betrayal, obsession, and a double murder that would captivate America for decades. This is the case of Betty Broderick, the woman who killed her ex-husband and his new wife. But was she a victim of betrayal and systemic injustice, or a cold-blooded murderer who refused to move on? Elizabeth and Bisceglia, known as Betty, grew up in a Catholic, working-class family in New York, raised with traditional values. She was taught that her role was to marry well, support her husband, and dedicate her life to family. In 1969, she married Daniel Broderick, a promising medical student from a working-class background who had ambitions far beyond the ordinary. The couple moved west to California, where Dan studied medicine and later law at Harvard. Betty worked multiple jobs to put him through school, supporting him financially while raising their growing family. In those years, she believed she was building a partnership that would pay off for both of them. By the 1980s, the Brodericks were living in San Diego's affluent La Jolla community. Dan had become a highly successful malpractice attorney, earning millions each year. Betty was now a full-time homemaker, raising 4 children in comfort. Outwardly, they appeared to be the perfect family. But behind the closed doors of their mansion, cracks began to form. Betty described Dan as increasingly distant, controlling, and critical. She later claimed he demeaned her contributions and used his legal knowledge to manipulate her financially and emotionally. Then came the breaking point, Dan's affair with his much younger assistant, Linda Colkina. When Betty discovered the affair, her world collapsed. The divorce that followed was anything but ordinary. It dragged on for years with custody battles, property disputes, and financial fights that left Betty feeling cornered. Dan, a skilled lawyer, seemed to outmaneuver her at every turn. She claimed he delayed proceedings, withheld money, and used the legal system to break her down. Betty spiraled. She vandalized Dan's property, left dozens of furious messages on his answer machine, and even drove her car into the front door of his house. She was fined, arrested, and at times institutionalized, but her anger only grew. Psychologists who later studied Betty describe her as a woman consumed by betrayal and loss. She felt discarded after years of sacrifice, replaced by a younger woman who now lived in the house she once called home. Betty saw Linda as an intruder and Dan as a manipulator who had stripped her dignity. Friends said she spoke a little else, but the injustice she believed she had suffered. The constant anger, humiliation, and financial instability fueled a dangerous obsession. Betty wasn't just hurt, she was enraged. And that rage would lead her to a fateful decision in November 1989. On November 5th, 1989, Betty used a key she had stolen from her daughter to enter Dan and Linda's bedroom. Armed with a revolver, she crept inside as they slept. Within seconds, she opened fire. Linda was killed instantly. Dan, struck as he tried to reach for a phone, died moments later. Betty later claimed she only wanted to confront them, that the gun went off in a moment of chaos. Prosecutors argued it was cold-blooded premeditation. Betty's trial became a media sensation. To some, she was a scorned woman driven to the edge by a cruel husband. To others, she was a selfish, vindictive killer who could not accept the end of her marriage. The first trial ended in a hung jury, reflecting how divided public opinion was. But in 1991, at her second trial, she was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. Betty's case continues to be studied by psychologists and legal scholars. Was she suffering from battered woman syndrome, emotionally abused and gaslighted until she snapped? Or was she a narcissist, unable to let go of her privileged life? The truth, perhaps, lies in the middle. Her case highlighted flaws in family law, especially in how courts handle power imbalances during divorce. It also sparked debates about mental health, gender roles, and the pressures placed on women of her generation. The Broderick case became a cultural phenomenon. Tabloids covered every detail. Books and movies dramatized the story, and more recently, TV series like Dirty John. The Betty Broderick story reintroduced her to a new generation. True crime fans continue to debate. Was Betty Broderick a victim of betrayal and systemic bias, or was she a remorseless killer? Today, Betty Broderick remains in prison. She's been denied parole multiple times, with boards citing her lack of remorse. Her story remains one of America's most haunting true crimes, a chilling reminder how love can curdle into hate, and how betrayal, obsession, and unchecked rage can destroy not just a marriage, but lives. Do you think Betty Broderick was a victim of injustice or a cold-blooded killer? Like this video if you believe this case still raises questions today. Comment with your thoughts on how the courts handle her divorce and trial. Subscribe to Quick Crime Vault for more deep dives into haunting cases. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next mystery we uncover.